Alright everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am your Ice Dragon, Rayron VR, and welcome to day 4 of the National Model Railroad Month for November 2023. Today we're going to do a very quick snapshot of all of these different scales when it comes to the hobby. Again, we keep talking about the general theme of model railroading. For me is always a sandbox. Now you can have different sizes when it comes to these railroads and into the model railroading hobby. So with that, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So again, going back to the Wikipedia source that I tend to reference, here is some of the scales. Now, not all of them are being represented. Here's the more common ones. So we got the smallest right now, which is T. We've got double Z, Z, N scale, 2 mm, double T, 3 mm, HO scale, double O scale, S scale, O, 1, and G. Now, there's a couple here that are missing. I would also say L scale, which is Lego, and then you've also got 7 1/4, which is basically the one that you can ride on a big plot of land and so forth. Think about as if you haven't heard about it, Train Mountain, definitely Google it. That's basically your 7 1/4 scale. But with that, you can kind of see with the picture over here that this is basically a representation of the scales that are out there. Again, depending on your circumstances, again, we talk about you can make this hobby as expensive or as cheap as you want, and it just depends on so many different things. And we'll kind of talk about it when we dig more deeper into the layouts, and that'll be again a different video. But depending on your circumstances, you have a plethora of sizes to choose from. And that's the beauty about this hobby, is that you have a wide variety of scale locomotives that you can choose from. Another great representation, again, going back to my channel here, this was a train show at New Braunfels here in Texas, and this is what we call a T-track modular layout. Again, we'll talk about layouts in a totally separate video on a different day, but this gives you kind of the representation of the different scales that are out there when it comes to this hobby. And so right now, the smallest that's represented here, we've got Z scale, we've got N scale, we got HO scale, we've got O gauge, we got S scale, we got L gauge, and we got G scale. So again, just using a simple caboose and the different scales, you just kind of see the size comparisons. Again, each one has their pros and cons. Sometimes if you go bigger in the scale, it's going to get generally more expensive. But if you go smaller in scale, it's going to be a little bit harder to get those fine little couplers and get them onto the tracks. And it becomes a little bit more tedious and cumbersome dealing with the smaller scales. But again, there's different pros and cons. With the G scale, you can take it outdoors and have a garden layout. That's generally why it's called G scale. We've got if you want to do N scale and do a massive layout with small space or shelf layout, you can go with N, Z, or even T if you're brave enough to try to do something that small. But again, we'll talk about all that later, more in detail on a later date. But again, I just want to focus on the quick snapshot of the scales. But this is what model railroading has to offer when it comes to just a variety of scales. Now, generally, the more common ones is going to be your N scale, your HO, your O gauge, and your G scale. Those are the ones that you'll typically find. Some up and coming scales, obviously Lego is huge. L gauge. It is not an official scale per se from the NMRA, but I'm hoping one day we'll see L gauge be included in the official scales when it comes to model railroading. I include Lego in this because if you go to a train show, it is a guarantee that you'll see some a form of a Lego layout, and it's great to see. There's a whole standards out there for L gauge, and even with modular bases when it comes to L gauge. So I'm excited to see where Lego is going to go in the future. And then you got O gauge and the rest of them. So again, these are our scales, a quick kind of representation of them. Again, obviously we don't have 7 1/4 that you can write here, but just things to think about. So with it, guys, again, kind of a quick introduction when it comes to the model railroading, when it comes to different scales. What do you guys model? Do you guys model N, HO, G gauge, or G scale, excuse me? As you guys know, for me personally, I am a massive HO scale, 187 scale. That is what I started with from what you guys saw in episode 1 and episode 3. But we're eventually going to go into N scale because I love the T-Track. I love Kato. There's so many great manufacturers out there in N scale that, again, I just can't capture it all in these 30 days. But with it, guys, what do you model? Leave a comment down below. Leave a like if you like this video. And I'll see you guys on the next day here on the National Model Railroading Month. Thank you, guys, and I'll see you next time.